Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. MeatEater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. MeatEater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new MeatEater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, MeatEater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Oh, hey, it's another episode of the Hunting Collective. It's me, Ben O'Brien, and today we got a good show, a real good show. We're going to start it with, we went to the heart of Washington, D.C. I think one of the more interesting conversations we've had on conservation here recently was with Whit Fosburgh, and he's the president and CEO of the Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, better known as TRCP. Whit he's a DC lifer. The man knows conservation. We talked a lot about kind of the inner workings of the conservation groups we so love and we give a lot of our money and time to. What really is the impact? What are they able to do and how are they able to do it? And a little bit of Whit's background and some of the things that he loves. And we launched a segment called Prove Me Wrong. We also have a segment in there, as always, called Hot Spot. Cool dude, one of my favorites because it makes everybody nervous, and I like that. We led off the show with something totally different, though, than Whit's conversation, and that is a conversation on MeatEater high fashion, baby. High fashion with three of the lovely ladies in the office, Katie Finch-Ranella, the wife of one Stephen Ranella. She got a lot of good insights about Steve's fashion choices. Tracy Crane, our VP of Social. She came from the fashion world before she joined our company. And then Maggie Smith. She's in post-production, and she's also been on an Instagram account called Hipsters of Bozeman. So she fits well in on this podcast, and she's one of the more fashionable folks you'll ever meet of any gender. She's cool as hell, so you're going to love her. Now, I will admit that last episode we talked about including more ladies on the podcast in a legitimate fashion, and then we had ladies on to talk about fashion. I admit that might be oxymoronic in nature, but I had fun doing it, and I think these are three incredibly funny voices that joined the podcast, and we had a good conversation about the fashion or lack thereof of the men and women in the MeatEater office. So hopefully enjoy that. It could be the first of many or the last time we do it. That's all dependent on your reaction. So you let me know at thc@themeateater.com. Before we get to all that, we're going to talk real quickly about First Light. I was up rolling around the mountains of Eastern Oregon with my man Kevin Harlander from First Light a couple weeks ago now. I guess it will be a couple weeks ago now. Turkey season's coming to a close. And we were hunting turks, man. And we got 2 good turkeys on the ground, 2 good times in one day, and running and gunning. And my favorite piece, and Kevin and I had talked about this a lot in the woods, my favorite piece when doing that's the men's kiln hoodie. That's the men's kiln hoodie. This thing is like a mid-weight Merino X material, 95% Merino, 5% spandex. The sucker has a half zip on it and a hood. It's great for both concealing yourself when turkeys are in your zone. You can pull that hoodie up, get your face mask up as well to cover your face, and you're almost completely concealed. It's awesome. It's lovely. It's one of my favorite pieces for that reason and the fact that it's breathable. I use it as a mid layer, but it can also be a perfect base layer when you're out running around, running and gunning. It certainly breathes. It doesn't hold in your stink. It does all the things that Merino does. So look at the men's killing hoodie. I've pretty much worn it on every turkey hunt this season. I've killed 4 birds, and it's done me well every single time. That's the men's killing hoodie. Look it up, firstlight.com. Now, on to the show. Let's go.
I guess I grew up on an older road. A pedal to the metal, always did what I was told. Until I found out that my brand new clothes came secondhand from the rich kids next door. When I grew up fast, I guess I grew up mean. There's 1,000 things inside my head I wish I ain't seen. And now I just wander through a real bad dream, or feeling like I'm coming apart at the seams. But thank you, Jack Daniels, number 7.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hunting Collective. I'm Benjamin O'Brien. We're going to put this out on 5/21/19, so May's almost over. I'm sad. Turkey season's almost over. I'm very sad. But we have 3 lovely guests here on the show today. Tracy. Where do you say everybody's titles? I feel like that's important.
No. I like to be more mysterious.
Just want to be like a first name only?
That's right.
Trace.
Trace.
T-Bone.
I've had a lot of nicknames in my life. We could go down the nickname path. A lot of nicknames.
What's your favorite nickname? We'll just go with that for this podcast.
A really good one from college was Crazy Train.
Crazy Train.
Crazy Train. Why why Crazy Train? Please tell us.
Do we really want to talk about that? Is that not descriptive enough?
Well, listen, if you look at the MeatEater social accounts, that's Tracy. That's her handiwork. That's the brilliance that is Tracy.
Not necessarily just mine. It's a very huge team effort.
It's a crazy train over there.
That's right, but I try to wrangle it as much as I can.
It's out of control. Then we have Katie Finch Ranella.
That
Go
is
there.
right.
You're married to one Stephen Ranella.
Correct.
And you're also the... Well, it's not going to give titles.
Yeah.
That's boring.
Kind
like
of.
boring.
Work here at MeatEater.
You work here at MeatEater. Yeah. In a very important capacity.
Agreed.
Then we have Maggie. Peace. What's up, Maggie?
Mary Margaret, full name.
Oh, Mary Margaret. That's full name. That's very biblical. I like it. I like it. And you're actually, we'll say that Maggie, Mary Margaret over here, is like the creative visionary behind the turkey video. Me dressed up like a turkey.
I mean, that was a lot of people's vision. I just helped put it together.
Yeah, it was a crazy train, that one.
Yeah. It was.
Totally.
And so you spent lots of hours editing.
I'm the man.
Editing me. Editing
Do you hear
me.
that in your nightmares?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's exactly right.
There was a point where I was like, is this funny anymore? Because I can't tell.
It's midnight on a Saturday.
Yeah.
This weird-looking bearded guy's yelling, "I'm the man!" for hours on end. So, well, thanks for your that's really...
I'm glad it was a smashing success. I mean...
It was good work. Now, everybody at BHA Rendezvous was yelling across parking lots and in restaurants. I'm the man across. I'm like, yes, thank you.
That's my kid's favorite video.
Oh, it
ever.
is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they might want to go back and watch it some more, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And if you
click on it some
haven't
more.
watched it,
Crazy
you can
train.
head over to the
T-Bone over
MeatEater
here.
YouTube channel to check it out.
Yeah. Is there like a special address for it? No, just go to the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
You'll see
just
it
go to
there.
our YouTube channel. Just search for MeatEater on YouTube.
Steve Ranella hunts a unique turkey.
That's right. That's the name of it. And perhaps it could be Ben's first Academy Award.
Oh, right.
Nomination.
Right. Now,
Mhm.
Maggie, tell us about this idea. I heard about this the other day. It's very interesting.
Well, I just ran it by Steve, but we're going to do some MeatEater Oscars coming up when it comes award season. So we're going to have you nominated as the turkey.
Yeah.
Cal is the butcher. We got Jeffrey. Carl's Jeffrey.
Oh, I love it.
So,
It's going to be hard to beat
dress
Jeffrey.
up?
oh yeah, I think
Yeah,
we got to be
totally.
classy.
Black
Like
tie.
black tie.
Dude,
That's a
situation.
perfect.
Could be our work
perfect.
party.
And I just would like to be in the turkey suit, and every time there's another video, tackle the person.
Just keep making cameos.
Just keep making cameos, and then just run off the screen yelling, "I'm the man!" and run off. So hopefully you can work. You work that out for me.
I
Maggie,
will.
'cause that's
I will.
It would be an
very important.
Oscars to go down in the history books.
So anyway, vote for me. Always vote for me, whatever you're doing. Vote for me. It's very important that I get voted on in whatever capacity. Now, we're here today to do a lot of things. We're gonna get to a very special segment of the show in a minute. But before, I want to go over some reader emails. It's not reader. You don't read a podcast, do you? You listen to it. It would be listener emails. And the first one is a poem.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I don't think any other podcasts get poetry.
Unless it's a bad poem. Because there's really nothing worse than bad poetry.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, we're about to find out.
I had a first boyfriend who wrote me a lot of
You did?
very,
Oh, man.
very bad poems.
I don't feel like a man that writes poetry is going to keep a girlfriend very long.
Oh,
At least
that's
in
not
modern
true.
times. No?
No. But if it's good.
Did Steve and Renella ever write you any poetry?
No, not poetry.
No. But
But
like,
love letters, it
Love
sounds like.
letters, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
I mean, what's the good of dating a writer if you can't?
If you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should write more love notes to my wife.
You absolutely should.
Mhm.
Sorry, honey. I've written some, but it's not in the that's been a while.
Do you keep them? Like, have you kept
Oh,
them
yeah.
all?
For sure.
That's so sweet. You need to share those with your kids, too.
Yeah.
Some
Quote unquote love letters. Okay, we'll interpret that. Okay, I see where we're going.
I'm sitting here in the dark by the candlelight. All right. This is by a fellow named Bennett Jacobs. And he just says he was out turkey hunting. He was inspired for this little bit of poultry prose. He thought we would all enjoy it. I'll do my best, Bennett, to read it. And I practiced a little bit. It's called Gobbler in a Tree. Gobbler, gobbler in a tree, why do you insist on taunting me? With your beard a-flapping in the wind, you sent my head into a spin. Right up there in my front yard, while I'm beneath the landscaping. Or I'm beneath landscaping hard. What made you ascend the tall pine? Long before normal roosting time, was it a yodi, a dog, a cat, that made you act irrational as that? For here on the family farm in early May, there's still risk of harm. Another time, another place, you'd be catching a shot in your face. I realize in spring hormones surge without fail, and you're just another dude out chasing tail. At any rate, you'll get a pass. I just can't take a bird like that. I can't help but think, as you sail away, perhaps you and I will meet again one day.
Oh,
I love that.
I do too.
At a certain point, I was going to say that would make a good children's book, but then we
Then
got
it's
to the
Chasing tail.
face shooting in the face and
Chasing tail.
It's like, Mommy, what does chasing tail mean?
Well, there's a certain time of year, honey, where... But that's a guy that does a good job.
A turkey and a female turkey really love each other.
I feel that's a very good job that Bennett did on
Nice
that
job.
one. Very good
rhyming
job.
is not an easy thing to do.
Not at all.
And he did.
Mhm.
He rhymed tail with fail. You know, I mean,
I thought being under the landscaping hard was a little bit of a stretch.
yeah, it tripped me up.
but
'Cause he-
Instead, you made a little
like how do
I
you
boo-booed up.
Mhm.
how are you softly under the landscaping or hard
Oh,
under
you're-
the landscaping?
he was landscaping some concrete.
He just had to make it work. You know,
But A for effort for
A
sure.
for effort.
Yes.
All right.
that's cool.
Yeah, good for him for writing and taking the time. I mean, I really appreciate what he's doing. Now, also, how many people here watch Game of Thrones?
Negative Nancy.
No.
No Game of Thrones watchers?
I've watched the first 2 seasons,
Mm.
Well,
but
That's
haven't-
watching
that's
it.
watching it.
But I haven't watched
And then
anything
you
else.
fell off.
How many seasons are there?
There's 8.
There's 8.
Oh,
oh, wait,
that's
did you
a
watch
long-
them a long time ago?
Yeah, I watched them in college during finals. Terrible idea. So
Yeah,
I stopped.
you stopped
and just
doing it.
have not.
Well,
Hmm.
good. I'm
Yeah.
glad. I'm glad because this guy Scott wrote in and he said, "If you're going to talk about Game of Thrones, please put in the show notes where it starts and stops so I can skip it." He said, "I have read all the books that are out, but don't watch the show. Other than that, I really like the podcast."
So is
People are obsessed.
spoilers.
Spoilers.
He's worried about the spoilers.
He's read the books though.
Yeah.
Oh, I
respect
took
that.
that as that he. Oh, I took it as that he didn't want to hear about Games of
Oh.
Thrones, and so that's why he wanted to skip it.
You
oh,
said
interesting.
Games of Thrones.
The
Shows
spin-off.
Games of Thrones. It's a series of games about one throne. This was one game about a series of thrones.
Now you can really tell that I don't watch the dark show.
I want to watch it, but I am worried that I'm going to lose like months of my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
You will.
commitment.
You will. It's a big deal. Now, your husband Steve is a devout hater of
Serial television.
serial television, even in any drama in any way.
Yes.
Like,
I did not know this.
yeah, this is
It's very annoying.
But
Take-
he
so-
likes certain
What does he
television
like, then?
content.
He likes mainly like documentaries and things that have a very clear beginning and
I see.
end.
Mhm.
Okay.
He doesn't
I can get on board with that.
and But you're missing out on so much
Totally.
amazing content if you feel that way.
Totally.
But he travels enough hunting and
He's
whatnot
very, like,
that I
he's
get
very-
to watch it anyway.
Pragmatic. Just like that thing where you eat chicken when he's not home.
Exactly. Rotisserie chicken is delicious.
The kids are like, so they're just guilty eating the chicken.
We're like, finish it before Dad gets home.
Eat it all. Bury the body in the backyard. Well, it's good to know. Yeah, he's not a big fan, but people were a fan of him not liking Game of Thrones or Throne of Games or whatever. Oh, crazy
Games
train
of
over
the
there.
Throne.
Whatever crazy train over there calls it.
Nicknames coming to fruition here.
Anyway, keep writing into THC at themeateater.com. That's, of course, THC at themeateater.com. That stands for the Hunting Collective, if anybody's wondering. And now, well, you know what? I forgot to say the interview portion of this show, we're going to have Whit Fosburgh, he's the man at TRCP. And we're going to be in DC talking to him with some very interesting conversation come out of that. But we have a very important thing to discuss before we get to Whit, and that is high fashion.
Oh, not just fashion. We're talking now high fashion?
I feel like high fashion.
And what do you define as high fashion, Ben?
Some of the fashion above the other fashion. Is that,
People
is
in
that right?
Colorado's fashion.
It's hard
Is that
fashion.
it's hard. It's concrete.
Yeah.
But I have some music hold on for this segment. Hold on. This is professionally done. Wait. We're gonna about 4 more minutes of this here. What I did for this music is just Googled fashion music, and this is what I got. So
It worked.
This makes you think you're walking down a runway. Maybe
Yeah.
you should give us a little.
Yeah.
little runway. I was in a runway video. Remember that one time?
I know.
Yes. And you had a bang bang. You
Shoot
had
'em,
some
yeah.
little shoot 'em up.
Shoot 'em
Yeah.
up. I wonder if this is. Are we allowed to play this on a podcast? Oh, it's got words.
Oh, that's a well-known song.
Is it?
Stop the music.
Licensing. I think it's like a certain amount of time you can play a song.
It definitely is.
Maggie's in that
There
world.
is
Was that
definitely a
good?
certain.
Was there a certain amount?
It's usually like less than 30 seconds.
Oh, well, that was like 28 seconds.
Yeah.
That was 29
Yeah,
seconds.
it should be good.
Sweet. All right. Welcome to High Fashion, presented by the Hunting Collective. And this is me talking about high fashion with our 3 guests. And now Tracy is the most qualified here.
Well, I don't know about that. I would say it's too bad that not
Like,
everybody can see what I'm sitting next to, because I would say very equal.
I would
Par.
say from like a CV standpoint, from like a resume
resume
standpoint.
standpoint. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in fashion.
Yeah.
But I would say from a style standpoint,
Mhm. All are the same.
absolutely you and Maggie are the
You.
style icons in the office.
I mean,
Of
I've
icons.
seen yesterday we were in a meeting and you were wearing shoes that had like bedazzled, like a tiger and a heart with a sword through it.
Yeah.
That's some awesome.
Weren't they dope?
They were dope as hell.
I loved it.
And I was just like in this exact room in a meeting. I'm like, what's that caught my eye?
That was high fashion, Ben.
Yeah, it's the highest of high fashion.
You have an eye for high fashion.
Yeah, and I feel like the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is very important to me because I feel like the men in this office, there's no fashion going on, like very little. Some,
There's some.
Some?
There's some.
Mm-hmm.
they're like almost adverse to fashion.
It all depends on how you define fashion, right? Like fashion is a way that you articulate your personality and kind of your persona through what you put on your body, right?
Yeah,
like
how you want other people to see you.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And if you care how other people see you
Mm-hmm.
as well.
But I feel like even with those who claim they don't care, it's all part of a deliberate effort of like how you're presenting yourself.
Absolutely.
These are choices you're making.
That's true.
So I think the boys in this office can.
The guys in this office wouldn't all dress exactly the same if there wasn't an aesthetic
some kind of aesthetic.
Totally.
that they were going for.
Yeah, the plaid shirt seems to be a winner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the beards.
The beard.
Yeah.
We sure do
totally.
like
Your
those.
grooming is a key part of fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Tracy, T-Bone, Crazy Train. give us your experience in fashion, and then like I liked how you defined fashion.
Yep.
But like kind of give us it's an overall picture of how you see fashion in the MeatEater office, like how people, how people are approaching it.
How people are approaching
'Cause
fashion
there's certainly,
in the MeatEater office.
I feel there's two factions. I feel that there's the people in this room, not including me, and then every other bum walking around.
Well, look, the reality is women and men, for the most part, there are exceptions to this rule, look at fashion differently. Women definitely take a lot more enjoyment in it. And I feel like men typically focus on it as like a function, right? Like they don't typically enjoy shopping or finding new things or trying new styles or trying trends. And again, this is an overgeneralized statement, but I feel like women typically love that. We love to try new trends. We love to play around with new things. We like to have fun with it. Men, it's like function. It's like you guys were talking the other day about how your pants need to be a certain length for flip-flops.
Yeah, it's a function thing.
It's a function thing. And also I was like, well, when you find the right pant, you're buying like 10 pairs of them and throwing them in your closet so you never have to think about it again. The idea if I had 10 pairs of the same thing makes me like begin to break out in hives.
No, I feel like I think like that all the time. I'm like, if I could just, this looks nice. If I just get 4 or 5 of these, I'd be good to go.
Yeah. Totally.
But then there's the whole trend around like the uniform. Or like, the French way of thinking about fashion, in my understanding, is there's like several really nice pieces, but like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 per season, and you just wear the shit out of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move on to sort of your next uniform.
Yep.
I would appreciate that. Not necessarily having a bunch of the same thing, but like having a very limited
and making it easy.
Yes.
It's interesting that you say that because back in the day when I used to work in fashion and do marketing for a brand that spoke to women's, men's, and kids, a bunch of different categories, the way we marketed to men was so vastly different. The idea of like making a list or like giving them that like fail proof, like this is what you wear and these are the outfits and this is how you style it. So
it's
it
like
was like
hunting clothes.
Literally
Same
like a
thing.
checklist was like really effective. Like that worked really well. And I feel like women like to have a little bit more fun with it overall. However, I used to know this editor who would shop, and where she would shop, they would take pictures of the outfits, and then she would hang the outfits in her closet just as the picture looked, and then she would go in for the day and be like, I'm going to wear this look today, and she'd like pull it all out, and the picture would be there, and she'd like get dressed just like that, and she'd like be on her merry way.
Yep. That
If I could do
my, like, ideal.
If I could do that would be nice. Yeah, if somebody like they're that's Tuesday, and I would just put that on.
But shopping, I've learned it's better to go in. Like if you're like, oh, I love that shirt.
Yeah.
Just have them style an outfit for you.
Yeah.
And then buy the outfit. And then it's like you don't have to think about it.
Totally.
It's just one thing I don't want to think about. But I
Interesting.
do want to be like, but it looks put together.
Yes. Totally. Interesting.
All right, Maggie, you want to give us your fashion? Like what? You've been featured a couple times on the Hipsters of Bozeman
Woo!
page. Shout out to those folks. You're in the trust tree in the nest. I'm a hipster too. Don't worry.
Yeah, we're both hipsters. It's cool.
And so, no judgment.
I actually made
here.
it a goal to get on that page, and
I'm
so
trying
when I
to get on
finally
there,
got
too,
on there,
yeah.
I was like, "Yeah!"
You've been on there like twice, right?
I think so.
2 featured.
Yep.
Did you know photos were being taken of you at the time?
No, I didn't. And one of them, I'm standing like heels together, like in this duck pose, and it's just like the most awful photo of me. But
I don't believe there could be a bad photo of me.
thank you.
So, what when you're putting together your ensembles, what are you thinking about here?
Kind of depends on the day, what I'm feeling, what's in the mood. I like to play with stuff, like Tracy said. Like I like to put stuff together and test it out and see what works. And I have a lot of old stuff from my grandmas and my
love that.
great aunts that I've hung on to that are like specialty pieces. But then I'm not afraid to go to Target and just like buy inexpensive stuff because it's trendy right now. And then I'll sell stuff later on and just move through. I like to try out different things.
Eclectic.
Yeah.
All right.
I definitely failed in my fashion attempts.
No, I've never seen
We
it.
all have, right? Like that's part of the
It's
fun.
part of the fun of it.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. Let me hold on. Let me go back to the music a minute. I'm going to need some inspiration for the next part. All right. Back to now. We're going to talk about the more important topic is the MeatEater crew and what they feel about their attire. And we're going to start with Ranella. And This is what this is really all about. We're trying to get at like who this man is. How does he function? What does he think about?
We definitely have the expert in the room to help us with that.
Yes, we
So
do.
this is all a big ruse to find out how the mind of Steve Ranella really works.
What he thinks when he goes into his closet.
Now, I think in the last MeatEater podcast that we did, Steve's just talking about only showering like a couple times a week.
That is correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Not a smelly guy, though.
Right.
So it actually works for him in a way that I don't think would be
For other people.
remotely acceptable for others.
Cal agreed with him. It was like, the least amount of showers, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yanni and I were kind of on like, we would shower every morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. You just turn
As
it.
one does.
Yeah, you turn it on and just get in there.
Mhm.
It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't add a whole lot to my life. So that's where I started thinking, then I was like looking around, and I've been rooming a lot with Cal lately on the road.
Mm.
And where I will like maybe have a shirt pressed by the hotel staff to go like to an appearance where people are looking at me, Cal will he'll have like a duffel bag. And in the duffel bag will be the same shirt that he always but he pulls it out kind of like a magician would pull a scarf out of his and he just pulls it out, and I'm like, well, there's no way he's gonna put that on.
And then he puts it on.
And it's just the most wrinkled. That's like a tissue you find under the couch.
Oh God.
He pulls it out.
Uh-huh.
And he puts it on and goes on, and Cal's like the most popular person on the face of the earth. So I'm starting to question like how a guy should act. But so we start with that idea. And then we're gonna go forward. But Katie, can you tell us just a little bit about Steve Ranella and like how he picks his wardrobe for the day?
Oh, it's like what's laying next to the bed that he took off the night before, and then he puts it back on.
Yeah.
That's literally what happens.
And you in the past you've had to chide him into like wearing
Oh, for sure.
nicer
Yeah.
clothes.
Or like go and brush your hair. Like, I mean, he's not, you guys see him every day. He looks like he just rolled out of bed because he just rolled out of bed. But occasionally, like especially he does a lot of speaking events. So I've taken him to go and buy appropriate clothes for those events, but he doesn't really, when he finds something, he just wants it to be very functional. Like it drives me nuts that he can't just like find like a great pair of jeans that they're his dress jeans and he can wear them for dressy occasions, and then he reserves them for that. Like he will put them on and they will have grease stains on them, within days.
I spoke with him recently on the subject, and he was very adamant about laundry being annoying. And that like he would like your children just to wear like less like the same clothes more days in a row.
Yes. We have such a disagreement about laundry. We very much split up duties in the house. He does all of the cooking. I do not cook at all. But laundry is something I actually kind of love to do. I kind of like mellow out and like zone out when I'm doing laundry. And he won't let me do his laundry. He insists on doing his own laundry to make a point about washing all of the rags that we clean the house with his laundry. Because
this is why I wanted to have this conversation.
Because
this is the best.
He feels that it's all getting washed, and I'm like, but that one cleaned the toilet, and he's like, but it's getting clean now.
It all comes out clean.
So anyway, it's like, and I, like if I lose, and by losing I don't have to do his laundry, then okay, I'll lose. I'll lose all day.
Yeah.
But
there was a certain sweater though that he wore into the office a couple times that we chided him.
Yes,
like very aggressively.
I love that sweater. I bought that sweater for him.
Can you describe?
It has a cowl neck.
What's that?
Right?
Shawl collar.
Sorry, a shawl collar. No, cowl neck. That would be a whole other look. Actually, I should buy him a
I feel like you're
cowl neck.
misrepresenting what you want him to be wearing, and people are thinking you're asking him to put a cowl neck sweater on. People will be like, I understand why Steve only wants to wear his sweatshirt.
I'm just picturing it being like a black and white pattern on a turtleneck.
Oh, that would be funny. No.
That's where I'm at with it.
Yes,
shawl
thank
collar.
you. A shawl collar sweater. And I think he looks very handsome in that sweater.
Oh, I mean, striking.
But he was like, yeah, the guys were like bullying me about the sweater, so I think I'm going to get rid of this
We
one.
were getting him hard on it, yeah, because he just does like he normally just wears kind of whatever, he's wearing. It's you never notice what it is.
Yep.
But then when it's like that's like shock and awe. You can't throw that into the mix. You can't make like a Thursday decision to throw a shawl neck sweater on
But
out
now
of nowhere.
Giannis could wear that sweater and no one would blink.
Yep.
100%.
And that's the next part of this is that you kind of have. We don't have anybody that is married to Cal, but no one is married to Cal. So you guys
Hopefully
can.
someday. for
Tracy,
Cal.
can you? Yeah, hopefully someday. Although he came on this podcast, said he's never
I
going to do it.
know.
Oh,
I wonder if
really?
he's just saying that.
I think he's saying that to drum up attention.
Oh.
Like,
Oh,
if
maybe.
I
It's
say
like a lure.
hard to get,
Mhm.
hard to, real hard to get, as hard to get as possible. But yes, Cal said he doesn't want to get married. But Tracy, give us a quick review of Cal's style. Like we kind of know that, Steve goes with the rolled out of bed,
Yep.
like dirty rag situation.
Mm-hmm.
Cal's style, I would say, is like very like it's like effortless, but I actually feel like it's like effort going into the effortless look.
Cool.
I would agree with that.
You know?
I was going to say the same thing.
Kind of, right? But I feel like it's part of like how he's presenting himself.
Yeah.
And like it works very much for his personality. Like even the way that he talks and like he's a very like slow but like very deliberate speaker and like how he presents himself. Like it's very much all connected. You don't have like a finely tuned mustache like that if you're not thinking about what it is that you're putting on and how you're putting it together.
I feel he has the soul of an 80-year-old man.
Totally.
He sometimes he'll wear the pocket with the shirt with the breast pocket. He'll put his cell phone in that pocket.
Yeah, and
that is
somehow
not
like
something a young man would do.
but that somehow works for him. Like I feel like nobody would look at that and be like, "Huh, that's peculiar." Be like, "All right, yeah, there you go."
Yeah. Why wouldn't
You know?
Why wouldn't you put it there?
Like the fact that he wears his hat,
Yes, I was going to bring
like
this
kind
up.
of like up a little bit.
Or his stocking hat. Like he kind of wears it like
Yes.
Steve Azuzu from Life
Oh,
Aquatic, right? Like he like
Yeah.
rolls it. So it's
Yeah.
like smaller. It's almost like a larger yarmulke.
yeah. It just covers the top
that-
only of his head.
Which is a very hipster thing to do, Cal. I'm just going to throw
Well,
that
Cal
out
is a
there.
pseudo hipster.
Yeah, he's got
Yes.
a little bit of
He's
that.
kind of like an 80-year-old man that traveled back in time and was like, I could be a hipster.
I don't get the sense that he puts effort into his clothes.
I don't know if it's effort's probably the wrong word, but I feel like it is thought through.
Uh-huh.
Not like he's spending, 45 minutes in front of the mirror making sure that like, but it's just it works for what it is that he's trying to like communicate and emulate, I feel like.
I would say on a scale of like,
We'll be
well,
like,
it's not really a scale, but I would say Giannis, without being obnoxious about it, probably is more deliberate. Like Giannis hangs up his sweaters. You just know that about him
Totally.
without going into his closet.
Totally.
I would say it's Giannis,
Yep.
then Ben,
oh,
Oh.
okay. Thank you.
then Cal, then Steve. In terms of the four of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
guys.
totally.
If this is like, a scale
It's like
of give a shit.
who's giving a shit the most.
the most
Exactly.
shit.
Wouldn't you say
Does
that
that correlate to who looks the nicest? No, it's not. It's just like who puts the most effort
Yes,
into there.
absolutely it does.
Okay.
the nicest? Yeah, I guess so. But I think there's a important factor in terms of putting Giannis and Ben on the kind of top side of that list, and it has to do with fit. Like the way that their clothes fit, like suits their body, they fit nicely, it's not oversized, that has a big part to do with like how you look in terms of like do you look presentable, I guess, if you will.
That leads nicely into a story that Katie told me about Mr. Ranella in Old Paris. Can you tell?
Oh,
Can you tell us that story, please?
yes. So we were in Paris for our 10-year wedding anniversary. Not a place Steve has particularly wanted to travel, but I was on a work trip.
He was bow fishing in the Champs-Elysees.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
But he was being a good husband and knew that I wanted to go. So we went, and I wanted to go shopping one day just because.
Because it's Paris.
Yeah, it's Paris.
Yes.
So we go, and I was like, we should get something for you. And he was like, yeah, I'll get a sweater. And he was arguing with the woman at the shop about what size sweater. The more tailored sweater, the smaller sweater definitely looked the best. It fit the way the sweater was supposed to fit. And Steve just felt like it was way too tight and couldn't do it. And there was no way. And he was like, it's not supposed to fit this way. And she's like, I can guarantee you, American, like, yes, it is definitely.
That would be the most popular MeatEater episode ever. It was just Steve arguing with a French
shopkeeper.
Yeah. About sizing.
So he has the sweater now. I don't know if you guys know it.
He
has
does. I didn't think you guys got the sweater after that.
It's gray. It has a little detailing on the shoulders.
I've seen it. Is it a V-neck or no? No, it's not a V-neck. It's got I remember this sweater. It's also I thought.
But it's always very wrinkly when you see it.
Yeah. I'm always struck by. I'm like, did he get that in France?
Interesting.
That looks like something Steve would have gotten in Paris.
That looks Parisian.
As he does.
As he tends to do. That Vortex shirt. Wonder where he got that. Wisconsin.
You know, the weird thing, too, is that he hangs up all of his T-shirts. What? All of his T-shirts in our closet are hung up. And there's probably like...
This is rough.
Wait, but he doesn't hang... that's the only thing he hangs up?
That, and he's got some like sport coats for.
Okay.
Is there any way you could do a video of could you do a video of just like going down the shirts hanging up with this music? Just all of them hanging up.
It's so ironic that the T-shirts are all hung up.
That is.
But then the sweaters are in like a crumpled pile.
That is weird.
Yeah.
It drives me bananas. We realized when we moved, we've moved every 2 years for the last 8 years. This last move, I realized that he has never dry cleaned. Like certain clothes that he's bought and had for 10 years have never been dry cleaned. Like ever. Wow. That he's worn.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. MeatEater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. MeatEater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new MeatEater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, MeatEater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24th. The Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Interesting.
It's gross. It's just... I mean, these are not clothes you can wash. These are like dry clean only clothes.
Totally.
Who's the... Mitch Hedberg has that joke about if it's dry clean only, it's dirty.
Yeah. Totally.
All right, well, we got to move on to Giannis particularly. Because he is the eagle, the fashion icon of the office, I feel. And it's mostly just because he's this low bar elsewhere. But, like, he definitely... But Katie made a point that if he often would wear the same kind of thing that Steve would wear...
As they do a
lot... Yanni always looks like he thought it through.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I'm telling you, it has to do with fit.
It's fit.
It's also what he's pairing it with. It's the fact that it's like not wrinkly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Possibly.
Does Yanni press his jeans, you feel?
Nobody presses a jean. If you're pressing your jeans, you should be spending your time doing something else. That is a tragedy.
Yes.
All right.
agree with that.
Ben's like, I'm going to stop pressing my
I
jeans.
gotta stop pressing my jeans in the morning. They're khakis, okay?
Yeah. Terrible.
All right. Well, this has been real helpful, I feel, to just get to the soul of our MeatEater crew. Get to what they're thinking in the morning when they wake up.
I want to put you on the spot and take you to task for something though.
Oh,
I
please.
love it.
We're having a conversation about fashion. And you have the ladies, us three ladies in here.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. No, I knew that was coming.
So talk to us about that decision.
Well, I mean, Tracy used to work in fashion. You have all of the Steve Ranella knowledge that I wanted, and Maggie's awesome.
And has
Yeah,
been
you guys
on the
are
Bozeman.
You've been on Bozeman Hipster.
Yeah.
I think it, is worth clarifying.
No, for sure. No, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I'm screwed now. That'll be it for me. Gee, should have thought this one out, guys. All right, Cal. That's an awkward ending.
No,
I feel you're the most fashionable regardless of gender.
I would say that
I
is
would
true
hope-
for these two ladies next to me, I
And
do
for
have
you
an
as
intel on
well.
you,
I
too.
feel like here's the sad thing because this is the bar is not high, right? Like we are not working at Vogue.
right
For those that know what Vogue is, do you know what Vogue is?
It's an old ship.
And also, we live in Montana where fashion is
Totally.
very low
Totally.
to begin with. Like,
Totally.
No, I'm trying. This is my attempt to try to bring up the fashion, and I feel like there's a dichotomy in the office where all of us, like low hanging fruit guy, like we're just putting on whatever.
Yeah.
And then when I see you guys, I'm like, oh, people must think they're going to work at a different office when they come in the door. Like, why are those three people?
Because
That
I love it. It's like I love it. I want to. It's like something I enjoy.
Yeah.
This is the thing, though, is that there is a curated look that everyone has that's here. It doesn't take more effort to be, quote unquote, more fashionable. It's a choice that everybody is choosing, right? So, I don't know. In some ways, I feel like the dudes here could step it up a little bit.
That's what this is really about.
It's not about, but Ben, you
call out.
always look very nice, I have to say.
I get to take a lot of shit for that. Okay. Like,
You do?
Do you?
They give you a hard time?
I think that's my brother. Okay, so here's the deal. My brother has worked for Abercrombie and Fitch. In the
Oh, that's
past.
right. You told me this. That's why you wore that old school Abercrombie T-shirt
Yeah.
on social. As somebody made a comment, you could update your wardrobe. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you were
Step
like,
off.
it's vintage,
That's
bitch.
vintage, bitch.
I
That-
did not see
that
this.
high-
I need to see
Like
this.
high breast stripe in there.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
God,
It was
Abercrombie,
surprising because typically you wear a collared shirt. It's very unusual to see you in a.
I do often wear I like to,
Yep.
I feel like my grandfather wore a suit and tie every day, 3-piece suit. And when he when he came to dinner, he would take off his vest and his jacket and put on a smoking jacket.
Wow.
He was awesome. And then he wore a fedora quite often.
Oh, cool.
Ooh, I like that.
And so I'm like, how far have we come? If
Yeah.
I'm like wearing sweatpants and flip flops, this man was it was hot. He was probably hot a lot.
Yeah.
I felt like
yeah.
sweaty.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we've come just not like we've gone
Well,
down.
men's fashion is, I feel like, gone down.
way down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Caring about it.
Well, thank God I'm here to help turn the tide.
I will never forget when both of you first came into the office, and I was like, oh, thank God. I'm not going to be the only one getting crap from Steve. I will never forget him giving me crap about my white Doc Martens.
What did he say?
We just sat next to each other in the meeting, and I had my foot up like this on my knee, and he goes, And I was like, so, Steve, you like my Doc Martens? No, I wouldn't say I like them.
That's the other thing. I mean, that's a whole other podcast, but like opinions on what fashion should look like. Like if Steve doesn't have a ton of opinions on like what I wear, but if he could dress me every day, I would wear probably what I was wearing in like the late 90s, like boot cut jeans and like it's like that's not where we're at today anymore.
Totally.
But he has, and then the cowboy boots that he got me as our first present. It's like it's great, but I've worn those for 15 years, and we're gonna evolve.
You feel like he
totally
has a bit of a pushback when you wear like fashionable, like more
anything.
fashion forward things.
Oh, I mean,
He's like, what's that? What do you mean?
he's like those are hideous jeans that you're wearing. High-waisted jeans he cannot get into.
He can't do it.
And I'm like, tuck it in, man. Tuck it all in.
Absolutely.
Calm it down.
I'm
Right?
so glad. Like I grew up
Totally.
when it was like Paris Hilton, right? With like
Yeah,
the crop
real
shirt
low.
and the really low. And my mom was just like, you cannot wear that
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Can
know?
you believe that those are supposed to be coming back?
They
I'm
are
like,
going to. Guys, that's what fashion does. I was going to say, you talking about your Doc Martens, not to age myself, but like we were wearing Doc Martens when we were in middle school. Like, don't get rid of your stuff because
Right.
it comes back in fashion. Like, note to people who have like special items, keep them because
Yeah.
it will be relevant
My
again.
grandma,
Pass them
my great
down.
aunt.
Like, that's so special.
The problem is, I try to do that now with accessories, but in the whole like, I like to condo my closet every once in a while.
Like a clean out situation.
Yeah, like, does this bring me joy? And often
That's very lovely.
That
But you have a basement or like a place you could store stuff.
no,
If my mother had kept stuff that she like wore, like I would be wearing it now.
I know.
You know? Because it
Yeah.
would mean something
Like,
more
why?
than even just how chic it is.
Like, why is Tracy wearing a wedding dress at work? That's weird.
Actually, I will say my favorite dress that I have. My favorite dress that I have that is very special, and I will give it to Rosemary.
Yeah.
When she's older. It was my prom dress when I was 16. I got it in
Oh.
a vintage store.
Oh,
So it's
cool.
like it's just like a 70s sundress.
Yep.
It was my prom dress when I was 16. I wore it to our engagement party
Oh, come on.
when Steve and I got
That's so
married.
cool.
and then I was gonna wear it if we did a 10-year like vow renewal. But I didn't do that. But I still love it and I still
That's
wear it.
amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Totally.
My grandma made all of my mom's and my aunt's dresses for dances, and my mom saved all of them. So when we went to
See, that's
dances,
so
we had the
cool.
opportunity to wear those.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. I forgot what she
Right?
said. When she said that, I didn't say, oh. So there's that for you.
Ben is so bored, you guys. We can take this conversation.
No, this is
upstairs.
why. This is a revolution. First, we did Bachelor. It was Bachelor.
Yep. I thought, the
Did
Bachelor
Col-
or the Bachelorette?
This is Bachelor.
Oh.
I had a
Did
friend
Colt-
that was on The Bachelorette.
Did Colton ever get with Cassie, by the way? Do you
I don't
guys
know. I don't watch that crap.
She was the Bachelorette, your
Or-
friend?
Or sorry, The Bachelor. She
Oh.
was on The Bachelor. Yeah, she was on.
Oh, she
made
was-
it to the last 5.
Did she win?
No, she made it to the last 5, and the whole
That's
joke
pretty
was
low.
like,
That's
who
pretty-
is Whitney? Because they didn't
know.
speak very
Did
much.
she,
Oh.
Did she shack up with the Bachelor?
No.
No, that's
I
like
didn't
last
hear.
like 3. You
Yeah.
mean like, would you like to go to my special
Yes.
fantasy suite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like last 3.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She was devastated.
It's one of the many things about that show wouldn't work in the real world. If you said that to somebody, hey,
I don't
My
think anything.
you want to go to my fantasy? Be like,
I'm calling the
no.
police.
yeah, alarm bell.
Boy, it looks a lot like a van from where I'm staying. I'm gonna go with
And you have to
no.
wear this
Attractive as
blindfold.
your fantasy suite sounds.
You should drive it up the block. All right. Well, hold on a minute. That's how we're gonna close it out.
Great.
You think we're gonna do? Think we're gonna do this again? I think we should do it again.
Yeah.
I think we should have you guys be a panel and bring in other people. It's like what they're wearing
And just judge them.
and just judge them harshly.
That would have to be a video
Harshly.
version.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, for social.
You know, totes.
Let's do it.
Totes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Crazy Train. Katie, did you have any nicknames like
Not
No.
any that I would
that would say?
share.
in the-
No.
All right, we'll go like K Bone. What Mags?
Mags was.
Mags.
I have a lot
Nothing.
of nicknames. So
Give us a nickname. I think this is
my college friends call me Coog, short for cougar.
Coog.
Cougar.
Like they would yell
Did
at
you
a-
go for younger men?
No,
They would
it's a
yell
long
at her.
story, and I don't want to.
That's why I like nicknames because they always have great stories. So like you'd be walking across the quad and they'd be like Coog.
Yeah, it's me and my other friend. We're both Coog.
Coog. All right, now we're gonna make the most awkward transition in the history of podcasts. We're gonna travel to Washington D.C. where we're talking to Whit. We're talking to Whit from the TRCP about very important conservation issues in the United States.
But he is a very fashionable
You
man.
feel like we should cover that. Is he fashionable? You feel?
Yes.
He wears like a lot of tweed type items, doesn't he?
Yes, but he looks, I mean, not that I'm judging Whit by what he's wearing, but he looks very put together.
Think? Yeah, he does. He always wears like a suit and tie. He's a mover and shaker about Washington D.C. I like that. Let's real quickly pull up a picture of him and let Tracy judge Whit. So you think that's like end the relationship between me and TRCP? We can always cut this part. It's not loading, so
so it's a sign.
We'll wait.
It's a little bit more of that.
Here he is. Yeah, man. Like a nice blazer. I don't know why it's not loading. He's like always wears a nice blazer, nice button-down shirt.
Love it.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than a blazer. Nice sport coat.
Yep.
Totally.
He's got flowing locks.
Really?
Yeah.
Hair is so great.
My
doesn't
dad
have
has
flowing
great
locks.
hair.
Oh, I think hair
I
is...
think if the wind blows, like his hair.
Flowing locks? Like
I mean,
shoulder length?
No.
No, here's another thing.
flowing locks.
Here we go. Here he is.
He just
Oh, I see. I don't know if I would call it flowing locks, but I can see why you say that because it's a little long and
It's
he's
like a
got
little
like
feather.
some nice,
Some feathering.
feather.
a haircut.
Oh.
He has an actual haircut.
An actual.
He just doesn't have a
Which
buzz.
is like, yeah, like
It's just like he doesn't cut all his hair off.
right, like
Yeah,
one
and it's
length.
not done by his daughters,
right.
right? Like some other people in the office.
Yanni. All right. Well, Whit, fashion icon, Whit Fosburgh, coming up right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
I guess I grew up on an older road, a pedal to the metal.
Hey, Whit.
Hello, Ben.
How's it going, sir?
Good. You?
Oh, it's good to be here. It's good to be in your home in Bethesda.
Well, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, you're overlooking the river. You told me that the what was it, the CIA is
Directly
across
across.
the river?
Listen
So-
to every word we say.
I was going to say, if they're not listening when we record, they're listening afterwards.
Oh, big fans, yeah.
Big fans of the Hunting Collective over there at the CIA. Shout out to everybody over at Langley. We appreciate you. But thanks for having me in your home. We always like to start this by describing where we are. So you're the man to do it.
So we're about 2 miles from the D.C. line, right on the Potomac River, in the town of Bethesda, although there's no real town around here. And it's all pretty much green swath all the way into the Georgetown. And it's one of the cool things about this part of the world, and you're from around here, so you know this, is that it's unbelievable parkland. So we can walk right down, and you get on the river, you get on the bike path, and it's all open parkland all the way into the city.
Yeah.
And access to the river, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a little bit of flood stage out there.
Oh, yeah.
So-
And it's been basically a flood stage for the past year.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful home. Thanks for having me. There's a lot of real serious things to talk about, but I was looking into your background, and I saw that you were a member of Team USA in the 1997 World Fly Fishing Championships.
Downhill since then. Yep.
You peaked in
I peaked
97?
in 97, just about, yeah.
What it is to be in Team USA for the World Fly Fishing Championship?
Well, I'd like to make it sound more grandiose than it is.
Please
but,
do. That's what I do. That's my whole
I
job.
know. And that's my general temptation. But since this can be fact-checked, I might as well be honest with you. This is the first time it had ever been held in the U.S., and they wanted to have, the Bet Trout Unlimited at that time I was working there, be the beneficiary of any proceeds from the contest. So they wanted somebody from TU to be on the team. So my boss at that time, Charles Govan, basically tapped me to be in it. So there was no major tryout.
Oh, damn it. I thought maybe you were going to have to.
Nope.
There was no athletic tryouts. You had to run around.
No. But it was
Waiters.
fun, and I didn't totally embarrass myself, so that was good.
Big fly fisherman?
Oh, yeah.
Of
Since
course.
I was growing up.
Yeah.
Grew up in the Woodlot in upstate New York, had a little trout stream that ran through our property, no neighbors. So my brother and I, started, fishing at a very early age with a fly rod. Most of that time there was a worm on the end of the fly rod, but it didn't matter to us. And,
Me either, man.
Yep.
I grew up
so,
eating smoked trout. That was one.
Yeah, and then we had a camp in the Adirondacks, and bass fishing up there as well as trout fishing, and so it's something we did all the time.
Yeah. Well, and you made your way. I got a lot of secret facts here, I think, about you, but I'm not going to throw them all at you. But you eventually got into conservation. Do you remember like a seminal point in your life and your career where you really thought you could do this for a career? Thought you could do this for the rest of your life, kind of? Because I have some of those moments. I've talked to other folks about that. Do you have?
Yeah, so it was actually when I was sort of getting out of college, and I went to Georgetown here in D.C. and was a government international relations major. and had sort of fancied myself like doing foreign service school and going abroad, and I was just so bad at languages that that was out. So I get to the end of 4 years in college and realized I probably still knew more about forests and woods and wildlife and hunting and fishing than I did about geopolitics. So at that time, got a job with National Audubon Society, writing for them here in town and doing a little bit of lobbying, and then went back and got a professional degree in environmental studies. And it was just seemed pretty natural. It was a way I could try to sort of make my avocation my vocation.
I always wonder about, as time goes on, people ask, how'd you get where you are, right? And I don't know that anyone I've ever asked that question to said, well, here's how. Like you kind of just flow along and take opportunities. But was there a moment for you where you knew that, this is it? This is the thing?
I just really enjoyed the issues, and it was stuff that I could relate to personally, and that's important for me. I think I'd be pretty crappy at, being out there, selling widgets, just because my heart wouldn't be into it. But when you sort of grow up hunting, fishing, conservation, my dad worked for the conservation department in New York State. Oh, yeah. And it just becomes meaningful to you. So if there was, as soon as I figured out I could actually get a paycheck for doing some of this stuff, it's like I'm in. And then it was a matter of how do I sort of plot out a career path to stay in this and actually make it a living wage. And that it took quite a while before I figured that out. But you move around, you seize opportunities, you suffer a little bit along the way, but as long as you sort of keep your eye on the prize, which is staying in this, being more effective, getting more of it personally, then you're good.
Yeah. I mean, I always say when we have folks like yourself that actually work in the conservation space and actually make a difference, and guys like me who just kind of talk and go hunting, do you feel over time, my feeling is that politics have become more partisan. Our world has become more divided. I think that's from the outside looking in of DC. That's what would be my guess. Is that how you've lived it in your conservation space and
absolutely.
And moving on?
Yeah. So when, from like the 88 to 93, I worked in the Senate for Tom Daschle, was a Democrat from South Dakota. Great guy. Still a friend. And at that time, it wasn't so much Democrats versus Republicans. It was largely, regional issues. I mean, it was the farm estates, versus the urban states. It was, things like that. So I spent literally as much time working with, Bob Dole's office or Jim McClure, Republican from Idaho at that time, their offices, because we were aligned on what we wanted for that region of the world. And, there were many times where, things, farm bills, a classic example, don't break down on, party lines. And that still is to a certain degree true. But, one of the things that appealed to me about these issues is that, hunting, fishing, conservation, environmental stuff, these are traditionally the non-partisan issues. When you think back to, Roosevelt was a Republican, Richard Nixon, who couldn't have cared less about the environment, but he recognized politically it was a good issue for him. And at the time of, Watergate and, race riots in Vietnam and everything else that was bad that was going on in this country, he thought that was a way that could bring the country back together because everyone could agree on that.
Yeah. So
that's when EPA was created and the Clean Water Act passed and the Clean Air Act passed. And I think that sort of spirit has always sort of been true even to this day. I mean, Congress has never been more broken than it is right now. But like in the last year, we have gotten, I think, 5 major pieces of legislation through at a time when Congress isn't passing anything.
Yeah, we actually watched C-SPAN on this podcast when they were passing S-47, and I mean, there was no suspense.
None. I mean, 92-8 in the Senate.
Yeah.
And, 300 plus votes in the House. So, no, and again, that's the way it ought to work. Yeah. I mean, there are some people who are just anti-conservation and they just don't like this stuff. But by and large, it doesn't matter what party you are. I mean, if you like to hunt and fish, that's something that brings us together.
Yeah, it's the resource that right. brings us together because we're all managing it in one way or the other. It's super interesting to me, and I want to get into, because we were talking about before we hit record, I want to get into kind of what organizations like TRCP do and other similar, in comparison to a single species organization,
right?
Like RMEF or Ducks Unlimited or whatever. But before we do that, I'd like to line out kind of where you see, in a very simple, as simple as it can be, the two sides of the conservation issue right now. The right and the left. That's how we characterize these groups in our parlance. When it comes just to the idea of conserving wildlife, conserving wild places, and the opportunities to do so. Like, how do you line those up in your professional life?
So within our community, I think this is what you're asking.
Yes.
There's a broad diversity, and you have National Wildlife Federation, BHA, groups like that tend to be more on the left side. You have Wild Sheep Foundation, Mule Deer Foundation, others that tend to be further on the right side. That doesn't mean any of them are wrong. I mean, I think that diversity of opinion is great.
Yes.
I mean, our challenge is with 60 different partner organizations is making sure that we don't let some of those ideological sort of stereotypes filter into working together on common issues of common concern. And S47, the Big Public Lands Bill, is a classic example. I mean, pretty much everybody in our community supported that. Yeah. I mean, there were some groups that didn't, but they mostly just sat on the sideline. They didn't oppose it. But that one had something for everybody. It had wilderness areas, monuments that were congressionally designated. It had the basically right to hunt and fish on public lands unless those lands were specifically closed. Land and Water Conservation Fund. I mean, access. Who can disagree with access? So, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, there are different personalities, there are different boards, there are different leanings of those organizations, but I think I see it as our job is to try to bring them back together, to work together on things that shouldn't be partisan at all, and not let petty personal politics get in the way of this stuff. Yeah,
and I think as a community, as we were saying before we hit record again, that we have the power, we have this legacy constituency that I would call more right leaning, and a growing constituency that's either centrist or left or whatever. And if we can bring those ideas and ideologies together, what power we would have across the board, politically, socially, culturally, whatever, however you line it out.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, 40 plus million people in this country hunt and fish.
Yeah.
And, that's, not a majority by any means, but that's a pretty significant block. And I think what makes us different than a lot of the other folks out there is that we actually get out in the field and we experience this stuff. We see what's happening. And we can speak to experience about the importance of being able to get into the backcountry, or the loss of access close to home, or CWD and what it's doing to our deer herds. I mean, those are things we can all see because we're out there experiencing that, not daily, if we're lucky we're daily, but, very infrequently in my case. Yeah. And but I think that gives us an entirely different perspective on these issues. And some of these issues go all the way back to, sort of Roosevelt's time when, he and John Muir were sort of debating, conservation versus preservation. And there are certain areas you want to just lock them up and keep them the way they are now because, all we can do is screw them up. And Roosevelt talked about that with the Grand Canyon. There are other areas, Gifford Pinchot was his first, Forest Service director, that need to be managed. I mean, we're seeing that in a lot of our western forests right now, pine beetle kill, things like that. We just have this, monoculture of dead and dying, forests out there that needs to be managed. And, preservation is not an option. You lock that up, it's just going to blow up and burn someday. So I think that those are, sort of another part of the divide in the community is just that sort of historical divide about just, what people like.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many through lines. And another thing we were discussing while drinking beer before we hit record is this like there's a lot of through lines in history that play out today. When we talk about land transfer versus keeping it public, that's from the moment that we conceived of the group of folks you just mentioned at the turn of the century, conceived of that idea, there was pushback to that idea. We're talking about railroad tycoons and robber barons and people in at the turn of the century, we're pushing back on the ideas that we needed to preserve these things. We needed to. And the characters are a little bit different today, but it's the same kind of back and forth.
Yeah, almost identical. Yeah. I mean, I think that is, there are certain, entities out there, commercial entities that will favor immediate profit over, longest term, sustainability, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I mean, Roosevelt fought it with the timber barons, and, Tim Egan's book, The Big Burn, is a great read for anybody to talk about, sort of the depth of the hostility back in the 1900-somethings, when the first public lands were being created, and it had not been established at that point. There wasn't a strong constituency for it. Today there is.
Yeah.
And in the 1970s, Bureau of Land Management, which is the largest of the federal land managing agencies, went from a philosophy of getting rid of land to retaining land. And I think that really sort of marks the end of the old mentality of getting rid of public lands to embracing it and, for all sorts of purposes. Yeah, mining, grazing. Those are legitimate interests on public lands, but so are wilderness and hiking and hunting and fishing.
Yeah. Well, so enter TRCP into this conversation. So lay out for us kind of what TRCP is and what it does.
Well, I think to do that, I mean, it's going to go back to a little bit of the the founding myth of the organization, which was this guy Jim Range, who was a Montana guy, had a ranch up on the Missouri. Was Howard Baker's chief of staff when Baker was a Senate Majority Leader in the early '80s under Reagan. And Jim had been a longtime Senate staffer with Baker and written big chunks of the early environmental laws. And at that time, there was really no difference between Republicans and Democrats in environmental stuff. And he became frustrated that he thought that our voice, that collective, sensible center of the sportsman's community, was beginning to be lost. You had the gun community moving further right. You had the environmental community moving further left and getting aligned with different parties. And he thought that, just in the sportsman community, in his mind, had really just retreated. They were paying attention. Their little, duck problems or trout problems or bass problems weren't talking with each other. And, we're in jeopardy of losing a lot of the headway that we had made over the course of the 20th century. So he would decide to create an organization that brought all those groups together to speak in a common voice on the big issues, stuff that was too big for any one group. Energy policy, public lands policy. So he did that, and then today we have grown to 59 formal partner groups, and all we focus on is federal policy. So, like you said, when somebody talks about what Ducks Unlimited does, it's pretty darn easy. They go in there and they protect or restore wetlands, and they're doing great things for ducks. Turkey Federation, unbelievable, bringing back the turkeys. Trout Unlimited does a great job protecting, restoring headwater streams. Yeah. And for us, it's a lot less, clear.
You're saying that's lazy. Like just
listen, I love that stuff. I mean, you get dirty, you're in it, but all the things that make that possible are federal policy.
That's right.
And you have the North American Wetlands Conservation Act that pays for all those wetlands restorations. You have the Farm Bill that pays for Pheasants Forever to go out and work with landowners to, put lands into conservation. And, those are, we have the Land and Water Conservation Fund that pays for, access and protecting special places around the country. Farm Bill pays for restoring headwater streams. So there's a lot of things that people don't even realize that the federal government does, but are incredibly important to, doesn't matter whether you're the Wild Sheep Foundation or, Trout Unlimited. And, that was the thing that, we try to work on is all those things that, rise all boats. So if we're successful in getting better funding for the agencies, that means that all the public lands users, including all the conservation groups, are successful. If we pull everyone together and get a good platform on Farm Bill years in advance before the new Farm Bill, and really try to enforce that everyone will stick together and not scatter like a covey of quail when things get tough, then we have rewarded with, like we saw last fall, which was a really good farm bill for conservation. Yeah. Not perfect, but basically we got pretty much everything that we wanted out of that bill in a time that is, it's tough times here. So I think that, I look at it as we do that sort of, the dirty work that people don't really want, the sausage making in Washington that a lot of people don't care about, don't want to be involved with, don't even want to know about it. Yeah. But it's really important that it gets done.
Yeah, and that's why I really feel that my own understanding and the audience of this podcast and of MeatEater Incorporated as a whole, their understanding of exactly how you make the sausage, I think, is important because I don't think you could give one full example of how you do each piece of legislation or how you influence policy as a whole. But let's just take like Land and Water Conservation Fund for an example. That's been in the news. We've talked about that a lot in recent months. Take us through, in this last period of reauthorization, kind of how you guys worked on that piece of legislation and how you feel you were able to affect it and getting reauthorized.
Yeah, just in case there's a new listener out there.
Yes.
Land and Water Conservation Fund was a fund that was created in 1965 by act of Congress. And it was a deal. So when they opened up the Outer Continental Shelf to oil and gas development, the deal was that the oil and gas industry pays in $900 million annually into a fund that pays for natural resource conservation. So you're using a non-renewable resource, and that pays into protecting renewable resources. And this worked great. The only problem is that it wasn't permanently reauthorized. It had to be reauthorized periodically along the way, most recently this past year, and it wasn't fully funded. So it wasn't guaranteed. Yeah, oil and gas industry has to pay into that fund every single year. Then Congress, whether benignly or accidentally, or intentionally, did not make that automatic appropriation. So every year Congress had to decide how much of that $900 million are we actually going to use for what's supposed to be used for, and how much are we going to divert for other things that we want to play with.
And it was never 100%.
And 1 year it's been 100%.
Oh, it was?
1
Okay.
year in 50 years. So, but anyway, and there's, as they sort of had this sort of resentment of public lands with some of the Western members of Congress and Jason Chaffetz and Mike Lees and Ted Cruz's, who there became there was more concern over the support for that fund existing. I mean, its authorization ran out 3 years ago. We managed to get a 3-year extension, and there was still a lot of debate whether we were going to be able to extend that again. And if it doesn't have an authorization, Congress can still kick money into it, but it just makes it harder. And it's one more thing that people who hate the stuff can look at and say, this program isn't even authorized. Why are we putting money into it?
Yeah, it comes like an appropriation game.
Right,
We have the money, but what do we do with it?
Right. So what we had to do was, the environmental community has been on this for a long time, but rightly or wrongly, this program has been perceived as something that's really good for like butterflies and field mice someplace, and these sort of big acquisitions of pretty places. Yeah. And there was a sort of a disconnect that most of these places are great hunting and fishing places and have opened up a ton of access for our community, but we were not doing a very good job of making that story be told. So we've produced some reports, and we really engaged the sportsman's community and a lot of our partners to weigh in as not just a protecting special places program, but a fundamental program of access. Because we did that report last year with Onyx that documented 9.5 million acres out there of public lands that public can't access. And this is one of those key tools. If we want to get access to those, use it. You don't have to buy 100,000 acres. You can buy 50 acres someplace that allows you to get an access to that national forest. But that's coming from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So it's I think we were just part of a broader chorus of groups saying this made a ton of sense. I think another thing that really helped on that one was engaging the outdoor recreation industry. Yeah. And really making the case that this is about jobs too. The outdoor recreation industry, an $887 billion a year industry, which puts it, second or third overall in the categories of this economy. It's 2.2% of GDP. I mean, it's a big deal. But everyone looks at it and says, "Oh, you guys you're the fun industry. That's not really serious jobs," but it is serious jobs. Yeah. And so we can make that case that not only are you doing the right thing for wildlife and for access, you're doing the right thing for your local economy. And I think all those things came together. We had overwhelming support by the end of the day, and it was a good success story.
And so you're in your position as president and CEO. You're burning the phone lines down, calling other organizations, calling
sometimes
the Outdoor Industry Association. Like, how are you?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of that. I mean, you're making some last minute calls because you hear that so and so, and again in Congress, there's always a ton of horse trading. I mean, okay, fine, I'll support your LWCF if you support my stupid ass project over here.
You got to think of a good acronym for your stupid ass project,
right? So there's a certain amount of just sort of solidifying. Folks on, in various offices, this is a good thing. But, by the time that thing was going down, the heavy work had been done. Yeah. And so there was not a ton of, last minute movement. There was some. Okay. But then we have a really good staff. Steve Klein's our government affairs director, and, Andrew Wilkins, he does the House stuff for us, and Christy Plummer oversees all that stuff. They were working a lot harder than I was. I can guarantee that.
And so let's hopefully everybody, we had Steve Klein on when we were live streaming C-SPAN for probably the first and last time. Maybe we'll see. You never know. C-SPAN could get interesting again. Probably not. So let's move away from that and talk about the Farm Bill specifically, because I think as we were talking before, our company MeatEater Incorporated is based in Bozeman. We are sitting a long way from Bozeman. There's some confirmation bias, I feel, built into the Western aesthetic, built into the Western mindset, the aspirational mindset of go west, go hunting. Oh, you live in Texas? Well, you better go to Colorado to chase elk. So same thing with, you live in Iowa, there's a lot of whitetails, but if you really want to experience hunting, you got to go to Montana and chase mule deer or whatever the case. There is, I believe, some confirmation bias around things like land and water conservation because you start to talk about access. It's not as simple as just one word, but that's how it kind of shakes out in my mind. So let's talk about the Farm Bill, specifically how you guys work on it, and then how you're able to improve it for for both the environment, but then also for hunters and anglers.
So a little bit of background. The Farm Bill was created back in the conservation, it was essentially a program, all the conservation stuff was created back in the 80s during the farm crisis. And they needed a way to pay farmers not to farm. And so they thought, boy, let's pay them to do conservation, which is not farming. And it turned out to be really popular. Things like the Conservation Reserve Program, not only popular because it gave farmers a paycheck when things are really tough, but also discovered that these places like grew pheasant and whitetails and like crazy. And so a whole different constituency sort of built up around those. But that's just one program of many in the Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill is $5 billion annually, which is it's the largest conservation program in this country. 2/3 of the country, or 70% of the country, is in private hands, and about half of that is in either farm or forestry. Yeah. And so it is a huge swath of this country, and it's where not necessarily in the West, but here in the East, those are the lands that folks hunt on and they fish on. And if they don't fish on them, they benefit from the fact there are shelter belts there that produce clean water that go into the streams they do fish on.
Yeah.
So. And it's a very different program than a lot of others. You think of a lot of the programs that Congress passes involving the environment as things like the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, which are prohibitive. It tells you what you cannot do. Yep. You can't dump this crap into the stream. You can't spew this out of a smokestack. The Farm Bill is almost completely voluntary. So it's like, you don't have to do this. But if you want to do this, we've got some pretty good money for you to enroll in this program and help you do it. And we have a whole agency, NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, that is set up there to help you. And then groups like Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever are also out there to go and help you, get into these programs and have them be successful and have you have a good experience as a landowner. And so it's something that is really built on that initial vision of just trying to pay farmers not to produce, to something that's way more important than that. So we come in it gets reauthorized every 5 years. And it is a sort of a weird coalition of urban and rural that come together to pass it, because food stamps are also included in the Farm Bill. And that was intentional, because I think both the urban interests as well as the rural interests figured they could not do this by themselves. They had to create that alliance. Yeah. And so you have the food stamp program, which is the supplemental nutrition program. That is sort of guaranteed markets for farmers. That's
certainly like one supplies the other. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And but politically, it means that you have this sort of weird urban center supporting the Farm Bill and this very rural center, and that's why we've always passed them. That's why they've always been bipartisan.
That speaks to like how our politics actually go. I mean, I've lived in states like Illinois where you live in Champaign or Peoria, all the political power sits in Chicago. So this may be an example where those two things can actually work together.
Absolutely. Yep. Everyone wins in this one.
Yep.
So what we did was, but there are a lot of competing interests in the Farm Bill. I mean, obviously there's, the conservation title is just one title of, a bunch of different things. And, our challenge had always been to, stay united. So literally, 2+ years as we approached the, 2018, lapse of the Farm Bill, we pulled everybody together and basically got everybody and put out a white paper as to what our collective communities were for the Farm Bill. Yeah. And then, we created a working group called the Agriculture and Wildlife Working Group, which probably has 30 different groups in it. The usual suspects, the Ducks Unlimited, the Pheasants Forever, Turkey Federation, but, some of the, American Sport Fishing Association, Trout Limited, because, all of those guys have a stake in well-managed public and private lands. And then the challenge for us is, take those broad ideas, what we wanted, and then, stick with them as we got into nut cutting time, for the Farm Bill as it was coming to the end. And, and part of it was, for example, on the House side, Mike Conaway, who at that time was the chair of the House Ag Committee, he put together a proposal that, cut a big chunk of money out of the Farm Bill. And it had some important, reforms, and there were things to like about it, but the bottom line was it took a bunch of money away from it. And, but by the end of the process, we honored him at our big event a couple of weeks ago, because he sort of changed tune, mid-course and realized that, we could do more and we could have some reforms of these programs. And now he's a huge champion of it. So part of our job is to, not destroy these people when they put out a bad proposal, but to just, work with them and see if we can't make it better and, help them have it be their idea at the end of the day.
This seems idealistic. I love it.
It worked. It worked.
I love it. I think people I know I personally need examples like that. I need to hear that. I need to hear that articulated in a way that like we have very contentious issue. It's wide ranging, but we were able to win in this way.
Right. And I think it's important to know too, that it wasn't just the fact that you have a bunch of lobbyists going there and talking to them. Yeah. It was the fact that, these groups have members, and those members are in these members' districts. Yeah. And so when, Howard Vincent, Pheasants Forever mobilizes their guys on behalf of CRP, it is really important. Same thing with the duck settlement guys and the wetlands programs, the easement programs. And, so it really goes to the point where you don't like federal policy, that's fine. But if you like Pheasants Forever and you get a note from them saying, okay, it's time to engage, listen to them and engage.
Yeah. And that goes to, one of the points and wanting to talk to you is to be able to better we have we were talking before, we have a lot of people that give money to these organizations. It's easy to celebrate the bigger ideas, right? It's easy to celebrate access and habitat. But understanding exactly not only where your money goes, but where your efforts go. You said, single issue organizations kind of easy. More nesting grounds, more ducks, healthier populations, those types of things. But understanding the inner workings, I think, is important for sure.
Yeah, so we have some lobbyists on staff. I think we have 3 registered lobbyists, which is actually not a ton. But all we work on is federal policy. So you sort of ask, well, how can you do all that without lobbyists? So majority of our staff are actually out in the field. So we have guys in all the Rocky Mountain states pretty much, in the Gulf Coast, Northeast. Mm-hmm. And what they're really doing is they're organizing. So when they see something like a threat to public lands, they're going and mobilizing local businesses, local rod and gun clubs, chapters of national organizations that may not be paying attention to this stuff, and getting them to weigh in on these federal issues. And so it's pretty diffuse, but it's all focused on a single goal, which is better policy. And both it's the focus is on Congress and passing good stuff and preventing bad stuff. Yeah. But just as importantly are the agencies that are then in charge of implementing this stuff on the ground. So over the next few years, we'll have a big push to make sure that the programs in the Farm Bill are properly implemented, and that is really unglamorous work. Yeah. And it's not something that we can do being in the field, but we can get, because we have this broad network of partners, the turkeys, the pheasants, the ducks, name them. We'll get reports from them just saying, hey, we got a real problem with how, the fact we haven't had a CRP sign up yet. And so then we'll mobilize our forces inside DC to start putting pressure on USDA to, do a sign up. I mean, that's just one example. Yeah. But it doesn't work without the partner groups, and it doesn't work without the power in DC and knowing sort of how to, pull those levers.
Yeah, I mean, these things are far-reaching. I mean, you talk about the Farm Bill, the way people farm on the Mississippi River affects coastal regions in Florida.
It affects the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, it is, so when you talk about the Everglades and some of the issues going on down there, like, to me, these connection points are important, right?
Yep.
This is my region. This is happening to me, but it's being affected long ways away. So can you talk kind of about how managing the Farm Bill and getting people to do it right is better, for the whole ecosystem or several ecosystems?
Yeah, and the impacts are pretty. I mean, you mentioned a classic one, which is the fact of what a farmer does with his if he tiles a field in South Dakota, that no longer is soaking in that dirty water and cleaning it up before it gets released in the tributary that then has been channelized that dumps into the Mississippi River, that then feeds all that the crap goes downstream. Creates that dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah. It also, sort of exacerbates the flooding because nature has a way, through wetlands of slowing that water down when it comes down heavy. So like we're seeing right now in that Mississippi River drainage is largely a result of the fact that we have done a really poor job in protecting, those natural buffers along that river that should be, capturing that water and cleaning it and releasing it slowly over time. Instead, we've tiled it, so it's going straight into the big river and it's blasting down there. So when we get a big rain, that's what we're seeing. Yep. And I think that people have to understand that programs like the Farm Bill, they're going to be applied at one farm at a time. But collectively, they make a huge difference, whether you're a redfish fisherman in the Gulf or pheasant hunter in South Dakota, if Everglades, look at those issues. That's not a Farm Bill issue, but what's happening further upstream in Florida is impacting the quality of the Everglades, is impacting tidal blooms in the east and the west coast of Florida. So, I mean, this stuff all runs downstream.
Yeah.
And, little simple solutions, local, they help, but they're not the whole solution. There's got to be a whole bunch of those little solutions.
Yeah, and it's a nice dichotomy. And we have a little a secret project at MeatEater right now that we're working on that we'll release here over the summer that kind of goes to this. Like, okay, your back 60 or your back 40 might feel insular to you. It may feel as though like you're just raising big bucks, or you want more pheasants, or you want more of the immediacy of, even if you're thinking about biodiversity just for your own purposes of hunting. Every person who wants the American dream to have that back 40 can make a difference on that singular level. And then there's folks like you and TRCP who are making sure the broad swath of legislation is in place to allow that to happen.
Right. I mean, that's the that motto, act locally, think globally. Yeah. And it really, is, perfectly attuned to this stuff. Yeah. Because, you can't do one without the other.
Yeah. And so, over this super top secret project now that I'm sure everybody's now very interested in, that I've made it top secret, we've been able to see that working with, having a piece of land, working with it, understanding what the options are for a new landowner and how it can contribute to pollinators and how it can contribute to the biodiversity of the landscape and how you can work with a co-op of people around you, your neighbors, your neighboring landowners to truly make a difference. I think there's, for everyone listening who thinks this might be a little bit above their pay grade, it's really not. If you have a dream to own land or you currently own land, you can make a difference, and you can do it through the Farm Bill and through CRP and other programs.
Oh yeah, no, and these incentives are real. Yeah. And if you're the clever farmers out there, sort of piggyback a bunch of them. For example, there was another program in the Farm Bill, the Voluntary Public Access Habitat Improvement Program, which pays landowners to open that land up to public hunting and fishing. Mm-hmm. So you may already have land in CRP, some sort of easement on another section of your land. Now you have that on it too. All of a sudden, you're getting some pretty decent money for doing what's really right for the environment and you and me.
No, there's a lot of private landowners that they buy land with the opportunity to know, I can get this if I do these 3 programs. It basically pays for the property. I have to abide by these guidelines over my course of time owning this piece, but if I'm buying it for recreational purposes, these federal programs will basically pay its way, and I'll get to go hunting. All I have to do is help manage the land.
Right.
I think that's a big deal. So I think, speaking of that, I worry about issue fatigue with CWD. I worry that people are that we're pointing the finger at this boogeyman and continually talking about it in these conceptual ways. I think everyone knows chronic wasting disease. It's an issue in the western states, it's in the eastern states. I grew up in western Maryland. We had CWD like 8 years ago in Greenridge State Forest where I hunted, and they shut it. I think they shut deer hunting down for at least a year or two before when they could get testing. So it's been around. It's more prevalent now, I think, than ever. It's increasingly so. So we won't bang that drum too much. But from a policy level, where are we?
So we're making headway, I think. So we've got, I think, 4 different bills in Congress right now that would increase money for research, and that includes the CDC work on the prions and susceptibility to humans and things like that. Yeah. But it's also just sort of how is it spread, and then that research goes into things like, can there be a live test developed for the captive industry that can tell them if an animal is sick or not, so they don't have to sort of kill them before they figure it out. Yeah. Which eventually will lead to a decent dead test. So if you and I kill deer someplace, we can either take it to a local check station or even do it ourselves, ideally, and know really quickly whether this deer is diseased or not. So that's the research side of it.
But that's all based. Most of, if not all, that legislation is based on funding.
Yep, this is all money.
State or federal-based funding.
So it's all money. And then the other part of the money is that APHIS, which is the agriculture, health. I'm going to butcher the acronym, but basically it's a department within the section of the Department of Agriculture that funds this stuff. In the old days, they would fund this. When this first popped up, there were about $15 million, 12 or 15, that would go out to the states to pay for testing and surveillance of those states, so they knew if they would have it or not. Since that money died away, and so that doesn't exist anymore. So what we need to do is get that money back in, another $15 million, and we think we're going to be able to do that this year. that will then go back to those states. Because right now, those states don't have any money dedicated for doing this stuff. They're taking our license dollars, or their Pittman-Robertson dollars that really should be going to habitat restoration, poaching management, things like that. And they're having to do this because it's such a threat.
Yeah.
So by giving them that extra money, then, at least they'll be able to document where they have a problem. And the states that really want to do a good job, will have the resource to go do it. I mean, look at Illinois, which has, done a really good job of managing it. So it's less than 1% prevalence in the state. And it's, and hunter's been a part of that. I mean, they've whacked populations hard in places where it was, and that's what you need to do. But, Illinois is still a great place to hunt. And, the prevalence is so low that people don't really need to worry about it there. Look up at Wisconsin, where they basically botched their response. And, Doug Duran can talk about more like this.
Doug Duran's like throwing firebombs in the woods.
No, it's over 50% prevalence in a bunch of counties up there. And they basically have so botched it that, I don't know what they're going to do long term. But we need to get that sort of recognition out among all the various states, and give them the resources to deal with it so that, and listen, we're part of the problem too, the hunters. I mean, if the state says we need to hit a deer herd hard, we got to hit it hard. I mean, believe the biologists. They're not a bunch of quacks. This is not a plot by the insurance companies.
Yeah, don't take the bones and run them over to the next state and drop them off.
I mean, do what's right, and we can be a part of the solution here. If you kill a buck out in Wisconsin, don't throw it in the back of your pickup truck and drive it back to Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that's how we're spreading the disease too. I mean, obviously the captive side is a real issue here.
Yes.
Moving around these live animals all the time. And that has to be taken, I'd be very much in favor of a straight out moratorium on any interstate movement of live deer. And I think Congress ought to do that. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but I think that has to happen.
Well, we're inching closer to it though, aren't we?
I certainly hope so.
I mean, I think if there was a time where if you would have said that some years ago, that people would have strike it down. Look at the industry, look at the profit, look at its cultural significance, kind of like in Texas. But now I just think because of where CWD is, it's forcing people to think, well, if I had to give this part of it up, I'm sure if you talk to some folks in the breeders associations for deer, they would not agree. But if we have to give this part of it up to help eliminate the spread of CWD, we should should do it now.
Well, and I think that I don't think the breeders are ever going to be our side on this one.
No,
because they make a lot of money. With some jackass is willing to pay $25,000 to kill a deer in a pen, but there's going to be the incentive to do the wrong thing.
It's less them. It's more like Texas trophy hunters and organizations like that, where you can come and say, "Look, here's the science. Here's the data."
And I think that I have a lot less concern with the sort of profitable operations. The bigger guys. They have the money to do it right. They can do the double fencing. They can do the proper testing. And we're talking right now, we're talking about basically a moratorium on interstate movement. And a lot of states prohibit the movement of live deer in and out already, which I think all of them ought to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, if Texas wants to keep moving deer around internally, and that's their issue, I think actually they have probably a better control on it than a lot of states do.
Yeah.
But in general, what we can't let it happen is this sort of the tail wag the dog, which is, these sort of barely capitalized marginal producers that are cutting the corners, they're moving deer all around. Those are the guys that are posed a real threat to our industry.
Yeah. Well, and as this threat grows, so does the advocacy for the response, right? It's weird that I had the guys from Sportsman Alliance on. They said, as an industry or a community, we don't wait till the wolf's at our door. We wait till it's in the bed with us. Right. We wait till it's already almost too late in some cases, especially with an infectious disease like this one.
Yeah, no, exactly. We don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And I just think we have to be aggressive in tackling it. And the feds certainly have a role in terms of the funding. What we also need to do is look at, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a herd certification program that it certifies CWD-free herds. Half the new infections this past year were in CWD-free herds. I mean, it's a freaking joke. So what we're trying to do is get the General Accounting Office to actually go out, or National Academy of Science, go out and do a study of that herd certification program.
Like what are they doing? Yeah. How could you possibly, I
mean, the problem is that the current live test can only tell you if an animal does have it. It can't tell you if it doesn't have it because it may not have, established enough in the body of the animal to give you a true reading. So, it's just we don't have the science to do that right. And the notion that we're certifying any herd as CWD free right now is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a chuckle. Like gives me a nice chuckle. Oh, we're good here. We're good.
Yeah. No,
let's move on.
To see here.
Let's move on, guys. Well, let's as we're tackling these tougher subjects, let's move on to climate change. I feel like it's very similar to CWD in a broad sense. It's like as this becomes a bigger problem, as we see real tangible differences in wildlife habitat and wildlife populations and our resource being affected by what we can deduce to be climate changes. I think, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, I think that everyone's a little more comfortable now talking about the issue, but then acting on the issue. So set us up from your perspective where you sit, where climate change is and kind of our ability to act on some of the things we're seeing.
Well, I think that, our community tends to be on the front lines of seeing it.
Yeah.
So we see later duck migrations. We see elk moving out of the mountains later. We see, moose being eaten alive by ticks because it's not getting cold enough anymore to kill the ticks. There are a whole bunch of different examples. We see, the algal blooms in a lot of places. And so I think it's not a question of, is it happening? It's happening. And I think that our community can speak, in a voice that's very unique on this whole issue, that we're out there, we're seeing it. Yeah, we're going to drive cars. Yeah, we're going to heat our houses. But we got to do something about this. And I think that if you look at solutions, our community, the hunting and fishing community was very involved during the 2000s. TRCP, pulled together our various partners, ducks, pheasants, trout, bass, and produced a couple books called Season's End, then Beyond Season's End, that talked about, what was impacts of climate change on hunting and fishing and then possible solutions. And in around 2010, basically after the whole, cap and trade issue failed, and this issue really became, polarized and partisan, a lot of our community just retreated, from the issue. Just didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want their boards, didn't want them to talk about it. And so I think our community was unfortunately silent for many years. And I think that we're starting to see a change in that. More folks are talking about it. The impacts are undeniable, and the longer we do nothing, the worse it's going to get. But I also think that a lot of the solutions are things that are really actually very good for our community. And we talked about before, if you do like active management on those diseased forest areas, that is really important because those are going to blow up and just burn at some point. And if we can get rid of that wood and use it to something productive and replant and recreate those forests, that's great wildlife habitat.
Yes,
that's jobs for local communities. Yep. And it helps the climate situation.
And what a beautiful, and I do want to talk about kind of the Atlantic Flyway and some of that, because I'm from here, you live here, this is something I care about. I know a lot of people on Maryland's Eastern Shore that would call me up, be like, hey, you have a voice, why don't you talk about this, and what's really going on. And the beauty of some of this is there's an intersection of industry and environment, right, where even in our communities, like the waterfowl outfitting industry certainly cares about the number of ducks that are coming down their way.
Yep.
And what produces those ducks? Well, a healthy environment, healthy ecosystems, climates that are stable. And so can you talk a little bit, we'll frame it up with the Atlantic Flyway and kind of talk through kind of how that's been circulated. Yeah,
and there are people that know this issue a lot better than I do.
And me too, but I think just a general
I think that
framing.
you're seeing, the timing of migrations is much different than it has been historically. Which throws havoc into seasons and to even just you and me making hunting plans because you don't even know if the ducks are going to be there or the geese are going to be there at that time. Second, we've seen a lot more difficulties in breeding up in especially the northern areas from the prairie potholes. That doesn't affect the Atlantic Flyway, but northern Canada. And that is a direct relation that's just the climate is changing dramatically up there, and it's going to become a lot more volatile. And reproductive success is going to be a lot more reliable than it used to be. And so it's not the end of the world, but it's a clear warning sign that something bad is happening. And Maryland is down to like one goose a day.
Yeah.
And which is just unthinkable a few years ago.
Oh, I've got some like SOS text messages and phone calls, voicemails from people that I know on the shore. Like, do you understand? Like, you guys at MeatEater are doing the pine beetle articles. Come over here and talk about this,
right?
Because this is a real serious issue.
It's a huge issue, and the economy on the Eastern Shore is largely built up around waterfowl hunting.
Yes, it is.
And
whole festivals about waterfowl.
Whole festivals. You go to Havre de Grace, and all the decoy making and the waterfowl festivals, and it's awesome, and it's a great tradition, and that is very much at risk right now.
Yeah.
And so, I just think this is an issue that we can't just sit on our hands. And it's not just one thing. It's development. It's sure it's climate, but it's a whole bunch of other issues as well. But let's take a holistic approach and do what we can on all of them.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, I tend to think more broadly than most folks, and I really enjoy being able to discuss an issue where it does kind of the two ideologies kind of cross, right? Where we can say that if you farm better, you're going to get a better environment. If you get a better environment, you'll get more game. Yep. So no matter what you're thinking in regards to your political leanings or your ideologies, this all comes together in a nice package. Same here. If you take care of the environment and you live on the Eastern Shore and you love to hunt ducks, you will get a result.
Right. And again, I mean, agriculture has a huge role in terms of carbon sequestration.
Yeah.
And I think we have proven over time that our farmers are really clever, and you give them incentives to do the right thing, they're going to figure out how to do it.
As a community, they're the best at that.
Absolutely.
I mean, the best at that.
And so let's say a major goal of the next farm bill ought to be carbon sequestration. How do we do that more? Then let's give them incentives to do that stuff. And by the way, that's going to be great for fish and wildlife too.
Yeah.
And let's push on that. And that's not something scary. It's not shutting down the American economy.
No, and I think that all the dogmas, all the political dogmas, the things that are trotted out by both sides to kind of scare their constituencies into remaining in their corners start to kind of be lessened by these conversations. Like you start to say, hey, I understand that you think that it's all about jobs and the economy, but this does that.
Right.
Like this can do that if we do it right.
Right. No, I think we create this. I mean, America is a fundamentally optimistic nation.
That's right.
And let's use this as a challenge and figure out how we're going to address it, and put our shoulders into it and do it. And I think that our community, because we're not stereotyped left or right, has a real opportunity to play a leading role in this.
Yeah. What I'm going to ask you a real tough question now.
All right.
All the people. If I'm a regular guy here that's listening to this, maybe I'm a member of BHA or I'm involved with TRCP at some level. I'm interested in these topics. When it comes to climate change, what the hell can I do?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that we have to tell you what it is you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been part of the problem, is that there is no concrete action in terms of federal policy right now because Congress has been so broken on this particular issue. Now, that may be starting to change a little bit. But also read up and figure out there are a lot of things, obviously you can do things locally and you can support local initiatives that are, along these same lines. But I think that in terms of overall policy stuff, just start saying that this is real and let's start doing something about it because, obviously our members of Congress have not been hearing that enough. They've been hearing it from, New York City and San Francisco folks, but they have not been hearing it from folks in the heartland.
Yeah.
And I think that is, where the real role that, doesn't matter how wealthy you are. I mean, just say that, hey, I'm seeing changes and you guys ought to get off your asses and do something about this.
I'm sure you can speak to this very well. I'm always shocked when you talk to congressmen about how much they don't read every letter, but they get reports on everything that you say. Like if you're in Minnesota and you're seeing less moose and you're worried about this and you understand, exactly what'd you say, 42,000 ticks? I
think it was like 40. The stat I saw was 47,000 ticks on individual moose that they're finding that are severely.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah,
and that's driven by climate change. These ticks are allowed to survive longer, gestate longer because it's warmer. If you're a guy who traditionally hunted moose in Minnesota and this is happening, you can write into your congressman and say, hey, look, I'm not in Minneapolis. I'm not in Chicago, but I'm here and I'm seeing it. Just as you would think, like a smart wildlife biologist or wildlife scientist would gather the data, gather the science, make a hypothesis, but also speak to the person on the ground that's involved with the resource. Speak to you're working on salmon, speak to the salmon fisherman that's there every day. Right. So I think.
And then when your buddy at the bar says, "Oh, it's all a hoax," you say, "You know what? It's not a hoax.
It's not a hoax. I'm seeing it.
And we can disagree on how you go about it or whether we ought to do something about it at all.
Yeah.
But let's not pretend it's not happening.
And it's a powerful combination. You can say, well, here's 3 reports that have all the science and data that say it's happening, but I have been around the resource every day. I'm telling you it's being affected by this. Combine that with the data, and then it's a sound argument, I feel.
Well, and the farming community has been seeing that too. I mean, they're the ones that are out in the fields every day. They're seeing how the climate has been changing.
Yeah.
And I just, I would love it if they also got more, vocal in this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, that's a good answer for that tough question. I think hopefully everyone can, take your guard down on this issue. I've never come at this with one idea or the other. I feel like I want health. Like somebody asked me, hey Ben, what's your function as a hunter? And less, I don't do much angling, but as a hunter, what's your function? Like, well, there's a lot of functions, but if I were just to pick one and name it, I would say that to be, a champion and a steward of healthy ecosystems, like probably more locally than nationally. And so if somebody was to ask me that question, that's would be my answer. And as a function of that, I gotta be involved in these issues.
Right.
I don't have to. I'm not chasing one ideology. I'm not trying to make it real or fake. I'm just looking at the evidence pragmatically and saying, hey, this is where I can make a difference. I feel.
Yep, totally agree. And I mean, you may not like AOC and the Green New Deal and things like that, but I mean, listen, I applaud her for actually sort of elevating this whole conversation and creating a sense of urgency, about that and coming up with a big audacious idea. Now, I have no idea what the Green New Deal is. I mean, I don't know whether it includes, just sort of technology and climate change, or it's Medicare for all, or it's guaranteed tuition for college, but at the same time, I love that audacious big thinking that this is something we need to get our arms around. And we may disagree on the particulars, but I totally agree that we ought to be a part of that conversation.
That's right. And we were saying even before we started, it's like you can, with something like the Green New Deal or any conceptual large piece of legislation, which I think is why S-47 made me feel so warm and fuzzy, because it was such a swath. Like there was some stuff in there I didn't like, but for a piece of legislation that broad, boy, it was damn good.
Yep.
But things like the Green New Deal, it's so varied in the subject matter. You're going to find something you don't like in there.
Oh, absolutely.
You're going to.
Yeah, and generally the way Congress works and the way S-47 worked is the really bad ideas on either end of the spectrum get jettisoned.
Yeah.
So you whatever comes before the Congress is that 80% that pretty much everybody could agree on. And that's the way, honestly, it ought to work.
That's right.
And the folks that are in that 20% on either side, they got some work to do to make those ideas more mainstream.
Yeah. That's true. Well, we got to close out. I feel like we did great on climate change. We convinced everybody. We've got to close out with a couple of segments. And this first time I'm going to try this segment, I think you're perfectly set up to do it.
Uh-oh.
And it's brought to us by Federal Premium Ammunition. We certainly love their ammunition. I've been harping on killing a lot of turkeys with their TSS ammunition. In fact, I've killed 4. If I had some time, I'd go back home and try to kill one in Maryland if I could with that TSS. But thanks to Federal Premium. And this segment's called Prove Me Wrong. And it's where I'm going to say something outlandish and you're going to just prove me wrong.
All right.
I'm going to set you up for an easy one here. The West has better hunting and fishing opportunities than the East. Prove me wrong.
I can be in my car here in Washington, D.C. and be deer hunting in 45 minutes. And the limit in Virginia is 2 a day. You don't need to have special tags, anything like that. I can go 2 hours out to the Eastern Shore and, assuming there are any geese and ducks there, have the best waterfowl hunting in the world. And, so I would just say that, it's really cool to be out in those big open spaces out there. But in terms of the biodiversity around here, the number of animals, unbelievable.
I'm right. I don't want to be on your side because it's going to prove me wrong, but I agree with you. No, I think the funny thing about, like we were talking about the glut of wildlife resources in the West, but when I moved from Maryland and moved around and found my way to Montana, and boy, do I really regret what I didn't take advantage of as a kid in this area of the world.
I mean, part of what is so cool about this country is just such diverse opportunities. And, no one is better than another. It's just they're so different that it's what makes it great.
Yeah.
That's why Steve Vernell is coming back here to seek a hunt on the Eastern Shore when he lives in Bozeman.
If you don't, I've hunted, I'm going to ask you here in a minute for some real specific information, but I've hunted certain refuge for Sika deer on the Eastern Shore a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. Not a bunch of times, enough times to know. And I move away and I think, oh my God, ducks, geese, turkeys, whitetails, squirrels, rabbits. I mean, cottontails everywhere running around. Then you get into, oh my gosh, there's a Sika deer over there that I can go kill. In fact, it's delicious. It lives in the swamps. It roars. Give me a break. This is a fantastic place to live.
Very cool.
There's no tornadoes here. There's no hurricanes.
Yeah, it gets a little humid.
It's a little humid, a little cold. But boy, I love living here. You can be where I grew up. You can be in the mountains. The Appalachia. You can be to the to the bay. You can be pretty much anywhere you want to be in fish. So I did a terrible job of being on the other side of things.
Yeah, that was not your
that
best.
sucked.
Yeah.
So I proved myself wrong on that one. The other segment is my favorite segment, and we'll see how this one goes with you. This is brought to you by Yeti. Thanks, Yeti, for doing all that you do for outdoorsmen. Of course, the Yeti Go Box is brand new. That's where you put all your stuff. You seal it up. It's watertight. It's airtight. I actually put the Go Box in my truck, and I put all my medical gear and stuff in there, and I felt real fancy about it. My wife picked it up and was like, I need one of these. I was like, what for? She's like, don't worry about it. So that's the Yeti Go Box. Pick that up, yeti.com. This segment's called Hotspot Cool Dude, and this is a segment where I ask you to give me a specific hunting location that for the public. You give away one of your hottest hunting spots, or fishing spots in your case, maybe a fly fishing spot where you like to go. This is like a real democratic way to give out your hunting and fishing spots to everybody that listens to this program. Now you can refuse. A few people have refused.
I'll do one hunting, one fishing.
Oh shit, that's two. That's a double win.
I'll start with the fishing, which is right here in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
And we have this unbelievable resources of the Potomac River, and you'll have in the springtime, that March, April, May. You'll have herring, shad, 3 different species of shad, striped bass, variety of perch species coming up there. It is literally, if you hit it right, it is a fish every cast.
Yeah.
And $25 to rent a little rowboat at Fletcher's Boathouse, go out there.
Perfect.
They have a rock anchor, a drop down, and just catch fish as long as you want.
You might catch a snakehead every once in a while.
Every now and then you get a snakehead.
You can eat those, though.
Oh, apparently they're quite delicious. And then I think the DC out-of-state license is $12.
Oh.
So this is, real blue collar, but, you'll find, senators out there doing it and, Latina house workers that don't speak any English, and it's just awesome. So that is a very good public fishing spot. In terms of hunting, I'm going to give you one that is renowned to be a lousy hunting spot.
Ooh.
And so that is the Adirondacks, which is where I grew up hunting.
Yep.
Big, mature woods, haven't been cut since the 1880s. Low deer densities. But the majority of, I think, Boone and Crockett bucks up there die of old age. So if you're willing to get out there and get up into that country, you can get some really nice
You may see
animals.
a giant squirrel or two hopping around.
Well, that's possible. I don't see those very often.
No, you don't up there?
Nope. But no, that's, and it's incredibly beautiful, and it's remote, and it's because it's so hard to hunt that is, it gets very limited pressure.
It is. And people think of, depending on where you're at in the world, you think of New York. You don't think of those wild places, but boy, they are.
Oh, yeah.
New York is a big state, and there are a lot of wild places.
The Adirondacks is 6 million acres.
Yeah.
So that's a big chunk of ground. About a little bit more than half of that is public land.
Yeah.
And so anywhere you can just get on that public land, go in, do it.
You got any specific spots you want to give people? That's what this is all about. Like, where exactly do they go?
Adirondack Mountains, upstate New York, 6 million acres.
See, there's a smart hotspot. That's a smart hotspot giver right there. That's a man who knows how to play politics. He's like, I'm going to give you a hotspot. 6 million acres.
6 million, yep.
You'll find something.
Got your Onyx. You can still figure out where to go.
Even folks on our MeatEater crew, I was headed to South Dakota to hunt turkeys in the Black Hills, and I was going through the Custer National Forest. And I know that our own Giannis Patelis has had a lot of success killing turkeys there. So I texted my friend Yanni, the Latvian Eagle. I texted him, I say, hey, do you got any pins you can drop me in the Custer National Forest? So, well, what's he do? He said, well, anything between Ashton and Broadus is great. Well, that's the whole goddamn national forest. Even my good friend Giannis Patelis wouldn't give me his hotspot. It's terrible how we treat each other.
Terrible.
In the hunting space.
Yep.
Well, Whit, I really appreciate you having me in your home, but also these conversations. I know these are tough issues, but tough issues that you traffic in every single day of your life.
Well, listen, I love the fact you guys are actually interested in this stuff.
I am super interested in it. And then I'll tell you that my dad listens to the podcast. He says he listens to every episode. I'll have to test him at some point. But he's told me in the past, and this brings great pride to me personally, that generationally he's proud that my generation or folks that are of my, in the mid 30s or younger care about this stuff. And I truly do. I think it's the backbone of what makes my life full outside of my family. It really does.
Well, I totally agree. On a very personal level, that's true. But I think as a country, this is what makes, this country great. I mean, and Roosevelt had that vision, 140 years ago.
Yeah.
And then public lands available for anybody, hunting and fishing for everybody, not just the rich folks, landed gentry. And I think it's, he saw it as part of the culture and the outdoor spirit that was America. And I think that's true today.
Yeah, and if you have it, if you live with it every day, and you have the opportunity to go outside and hunt and fish, and you love it, and it's part of your life, if it was taken away from you, boy, you would understand what you'd lost. So I always encourage people to just understand what you have. We do a real good job of that with our gun rights, and I support that wholeheartedly.
Yep.
And I'm all for that. But I think we can think about our passions around the outdoors in the same way. We don't want to lose them.
Totally agree.
All right. Thanks, Whit.
Thank you.
I guess I grew up on an older road.
That's it. That's all. Another episode of the podcast in the books. Thank you, Whit. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Maggie. Thanks, everybody, for listening, having fun with us, and getting serious with us all in the same podcast. I like to think that's what this show's all about, man. Not taking ourselves too seriously, but knowing when we got to get down to it. Quite a balance, but I think high fashion and high conservation may illustrate that better than anything else. So thanks, and I hope everyone enjoys this one. So, hey, thc@themeateater.com is our email. I want you guys to keep sending in your audio clips of you reviewing the podcast or reviewing subject matter or making comments. It's been awesome to listen to all of them. We are compiling them. We are picking our favorites, and we are going to begin here in just a minute airing a couple at the end of every episode. And so give you a chance to make your comments, good or bad, about the show. If you really hate me or hate what I'm doing, I want to hear that too, and I'll play that for everybody so everybody can get all the perspective they need to get. But so far, everything's been positive, and I do appreciate that. Before we get to that, go to the MeatEater store, themeateater.com, click on store. We have a brand new awesome t-shirt, Aldo freaking Leopold. He is a father of conservation. He wrote, in my opinion, this seminal work in conservation and wildlife management in the outdoors, Sand County Almanac. And he's just a hero in conservation. And I don't think a lot of people even know what he looks like. But my brother, if you go to Instagram, @WheelhouseArt, that's @WheelhouseArt on Instagram, my brother's an artist. He drew an awesome characterization of Aldo smoking a pipe, and it says below it, Aldo freaking Leopold. And he is the man. So read his works, know who he is, go buy the t-shirt at the MeatEater.com store. We would really appreciate it here at the Hunting Collective. And now, without further ado, we're gonna send you guys off, of course, with a little old number 7. But before we get to that, 2 comments from 2 awesome listeners. Here they are, and we'll see you next time on the Hunting Collective.
Hey, Ben. This is Matt, the same guy that called you from his turkey blind a couple weeks ago. I didn't take a turkey that day, but I took a turkey this morning. My first ever, not just wild turkey, my first ever kill of anything. And I shot it with a bow and arrow here in Minnesota. Just bought the bow in February here of 2019. I was inspired to get into hunting because I wanted to harvest my own meat. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to enjoy the public lands that we have, and folks like you and Steve and the MeatEater crew and the podcast and all the guys out there on social really inspired me to do it. And man, hooked for life. What an incredible experience. Thanks for what you guys put out there. Keep it up, and I can't wait for the next episode. Thanks, man.
All right, Benjamin. Big fan of the podcast. Love what you're doing. I got a damn near died here for you, but it's not hunting related. Hope that's okay. Hope I still make the podcast. Here it goes. So I'm 9 years old. Me and some buddies get together. We're riding our bikes, and we come up with the great idea that we're going to build a ramp and start jumping it. So our ramp is made out of bricks stacked up together and a plywood board laid on top. So we're jumping it for a couple hours. And then my buddy's mom comes out and says, hey, lunch is ready. So, of course, cliche, I want to go one more time. I hit the ramp. Bricks fall out of the ramp. As the plywood board bends, it shoves the top layer of bricks out from the ramp. I land on one of the bricks, stops my front tire on the dot. I flip over the handlebars, slide into the road. All the skin rips up off my left arm, and as I slide about a foot to 2 feet into the road, perfect timing, here comes a little Chrysler Sebring. So, you hear a little doot-doot, and there goes my left arm. I pull it up, I take a look at the damage. Looks like straight out of a Tom and Jerry episode. My arm has perfectly taken the shape of a U that would have fit both tires of the vehicle. The reason it's a damn near died is the tire actually hit the back of my head, ripped my Atlanta Braves hat off, and sucked it into the wheel well. Instead of running over my head, it actually hit my head hard enough to knock it out of the way before killing me. Anyway, that's my damn near died. Love what you're doing. Love THC. Not the green stuff, but the audible stuff. Have a good one.
Number 7, Tennessee whiskey got me drinking in heaven. And I know I can't stay here too long, 'cause I can't go a week without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking without doing wrong. Oh, without doing wrong. Drinking in heaven.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. MeatEater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. MeatEater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new MeatEater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, MeatEater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.